Along with Lori Waffenschmidt in the newsroom, keeping us up to date on what's going on tonight and through the evening tonight as news continues to evolve. And producer Garrett, who answers your phone calls. I'm Westside Jeff in for Chris Krok. Chris was on earlier today for Casey, as Casey takes some time off. Casey took a long weekend to go hang out with his wife, stalker with Carrie Underwood, his quote-unquote wife. And so Chris got a chance to fill in this afternoon for Casey, and Jeff, Westside Jeff, sitting in for Chris. I got to tell you a story. The story isn't political by nature. It's not a story of politics, but it certainly has political implications. And it's very personal. I'm going to go personal with you for a moment. It's a story of one of my best friends, and my friend's name is Earl. Now, Earl and I, we've played golf together since the late 1990s. And you know how sometimes in life you develop a friendship with somebody that has grown to the point where 1 + 1 = 3? It doesn't equal 2. It equals 3 or 4, where it just works. It just fits. It just makes it. You get that person, they get you, and you connect. Well, that's Earl for me, and I'm it for Earl. We click, we connect, we have shared values. We have such a connection that's comfortability that just works, and words can't explain it and define it. Now, on the golf course, we both have a love for golf, and on the golf course, we complement each other, and as golf partners, we balance each other out. You know, for years, me and Earl, we've teamed up to play in a member golf tournament, and more often than not, when one of us is in our pocket and out of the hole, the other one has a really good hole. It's amazing how we work well together. In all the years that we teamed up as partners in our member golf tournament, Earl and I are the only two-time champions, have won the tournament twice. We call it the Masters. And of all the groups that ever play in this member golf tournament at the club, we're the only ones that won it twice. I remember one year playing with Earl. We were on the 6th hole, and Earl was in his pocket because he's out of bounds. I think two balls out of bounds. I'm 230 yards from the flag. The guys we're playing with, another twosome that are really supposed to be the guys that are going to win this thing because they just work well together and they play well together. And I stripe a forward to about 3 feet. And I remember turning around at that moment, and Earl kind of gave me that wink and that eye, that your best friend gives you. And the guys in the cart, one of them looks up and says, "Mr. Ham and effing eggs." Only he didn't say effing. He said the word. And just that look and that stuck with Earl and I forever, because ham and egg is what we do. We ham and egg everything on the golf course, and we've always done that in life. Now, Earl and I have played probably 600 rounds of golf together since the 90s. Now, in 2020, several members of the club noticed that something was off with my buddy Earl. He just wasn't himself. One day, Earl showed up to the golf course, and he had shaved half his beard off, the right side of his face. The left side he didn't touch. It was the right side. He had a beard, facial hair. People asked me if he's all right. And some people were making fun of it. Now, Earl was divorced. He had years ago, but he had a woman he fell in love with, head over heels. I've never seen somebody go so hard so fast. He was in a relationship with her, and then all of a sudden it abruptly ended. His closest friends, thought that chalked up to us that he was going through depression. It was driven by the loss of a woman that meant more to him than life. But we just knew Earl was a little off his game. Now, Earl has one child. It's a son, age 35. He lives about an hour and a half away, and his son and I talk regularly. Earl just was off. He wasn't himself, and it was more than just lovesick. There was just some things that just didn't add up. Fast forward to January, I think it was 2023, or the end of November, December 2022. I talked to Earl's son and said, "You really need to get your dad looked at a doctor," and gave him a lot of information about that. And we talked it through, and his son took him to the doctor. And fast forward another month and a half, the son calls me and says, "Well, Jeff, thank you, because your advice was critical. I got dad into the doctor, and he's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's." and we need to make a move. So they moved him into a assisted living and memory care facility. Now, my buddy Earl was 58 years old at the time. Now, I expect people in the 70s and 80s and 90s to come down with Alzheimer's. You don't expect somebody in their 40s or 50s to come down with it. It's a very personal story for me. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, sitting in for Chris Krok. My buddy Earl at 58 was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. A lot of folks at the golf course that we play at were making fun of him behind his back about weird things he was doing, that forgetting things and shaving half his face and leaving stuff he was just not himself. And as he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, moved into a home, it really bothered me and it really hurt. And knowing that his son, his only child, is about an hour away now, and his son doesn't spend much time with him because he didn't have that emotional strength to see his dad go through Alzheimer's and then decline. So he didn't get down and see his dad very often. Now, Earl and I talk about the facility he lives in. We call it the insane asylum. And I've vowed and say to him all the time, I'm not going to let you waste away and die in the insane asylum. And he's grateful for that. So me and Mrs. Westside Jeff, we've taken it upon ourselves because I love Earl. I love him. I need him in my life. I need him as much as he needs me. We pick up Earl every Saturday and every Sunday and spend time with him. And I usually get over to see him about one weekday a week, usually about every other week or so. We take Earl with us on vacation. I continue to tell him I'm not going to let him waste away in the insane asylum. I'm going to challenge his mind. I'm going to help him fight that dang fight and encourage him to keep doing all he can to ward off his mind going away. But I know it's coming. I know it's going to happen. I know Earl's dementia, his Alzheimer's, he's going to succumb to it. I get it. I just hope it's later than earlier. Now, there are a lot of things I see from Earl, and these are some of the things that I see. He regularly will bring up stories, and this is the most telling part to me. And this is really key to the story. If you were a voyeur and with me and living in if you were on my shoulder and just a kind of a living in my life and just voyeuristically watching me and Earl interact and Earl with friends, you might not know anything's wrong with him because Earl regularly will bring up stories from 20, 30 years ago on the golf course, stories that developed as something on the golf course, or a basketball game we went to, or a football game. He's a hardcore New England Patriots fan because he grew up in Boston, or a hockey game or baseball game. That he'll talk about stories that he and I experienced 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago that I don't even remember. I don't remember them. I mean, he'll tell stories, I'll cock my head and go, I don't remember this story. And he'll say, and who has Alzheimer's? And he'll continue the story, and as he goes, I'll go, okay, I remember that. And he'll remember vivid events around the experience from 10, 20, 30 years ago. It's remarkable the amount of detail my buddy Earl, who has Alzheimer's and lives in a memory care assisted living home, it's remarkable the details he remembers from stories from 20 and 30 years ago. But there's more to the story, and I'll tell you that story in about 4 minutes. I got to hit a break. My name's Jeff. I'm Westside Jeff. This story has a purpose. This story has a implication. This story applies to everything that's going on today. And I'm going to tie it together after this in 4 minutes. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And for Chris Krok on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. The name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. And for Chris Krok. Chris was on earlier day in place of Casey. I'll be sitting in tonight, Monday and Tuesday, as Casey takes a long weekend to hang with his wife. He calls it his wife, Carrie Underwood. Lucky him. I call him Stalker. But anyways, what the heck? I'm talking about a friend of mine, Earl. A great story that really applies to what's going on in today's news and what's going on in our environment and life. And the story that's really dominating the world. My buddy Earl, at the age of 58, I'm as close to Earl as I am anybody, and he's as close to me as anybody. He's been single for the last 10 or 12 years. So he doesn't live with somebody and have somebody there to watch and recognize and see what he's doing. At 58 years old, he was diagnosed officially with Alzheimer's and moved into a memory care and assisted living home. You expect that out of somebody in their 70s and 80s and 90s, but you don't expect that as somebody in the 50s. And what's odd about Earl, my buddy Earl, and it's hurtful to talk about it because I love Earl. I love him, and I don't like seeing his mind go. What's hard to see is, and I spend every Saturday with him, every Sunday with him, Mrs. Westside Jeff, and I take him on vacation with us. We took him on a vacation in April up to Knoxville and Tennessee area for a golf vacation and spent a week with him. Same with last year. We have him over for Thanksgiving, Christmas, all the holidays, spend a lot of time with him. And what's interesting about Earl is if you were voyeuristically with us and watching us interact, when Earl brings up conversations of things that happened 10, 15, 20 years ago, you'd have no clue there's anything wrong with Earl because he remembers them better than I do. His attention to details, vivid. His memory of events from 15, 20 years ago is remarkable. It's impeccable. But when I walk into his room every Saturday and every Sunday to pick him up. And the first thing I do is I walk into the facility, I sign him out. I stop at the nurse's station and say, have you seen him? Did he eat breakfast, lunch, dinner? What did they serve? Is it a good day or bad day? That's the key question for me. Is it a good day or bad day? I go up to his room. It's not uncommon if one of the aides hasn't helped him. I'll walk in the room and I'll see one of several things. I'll see him with his golf shirt on backwards or inside out. I'll see him with a pair of pants on and they're not zipped up or buttoned. I'll see him I'll say to him, you got your socks on? If he has long pants on, he'll lift up his pant legs, and it's not uncommon to see two socks on one foot and no sock on the other. It's not uncommon to see his left shoe on his right foot, his right shoe on his left foot. Those are just simple details that Earl will miss. So I regularly have to go in to make sure he's dressed correctly. Once I get him and we walk outside, if he's tired, I can tell when he's tired because I drive a Honda Pilot. He'll open the back door and get in there. And then I'll get in the front seat, and then I'll say, Earl, get in the front seat. So he'll get out and get in the front seat. And if he's really tired, I nowadays say to him, buckle your seatbelt. And if he's really tired, he just looks through me, blank stare. He's not sure. His mind doesn't process what a seatbelt is, what it's for, and how to buckle it. So I'll have to help him. But he's getting to the point after the routine of doing this enough times, he knows to do that. So we almost got that tackled. But when he's tired, simple little things that you and I do on a regular basis, we don't think about, he struggles with. And then when we were in Tennessee on vacation, golf vacation, I had to help him in the bathroom. And I'm not going to go in detail on that. But part of that is I'd say to him, take a shower. And I had to explain to him, you get undressed, you get in the shower, you actually take a washcloth, soap it up, and you wash all of your body. To him, I stood there the first time he did a shower and watched him. He just got in, he just stood under the water, and that was it. And I'm like, no, you got to wash your hair with shampoo. You got to wash your body with soap. You got to wash every crack and crevice. He also doesn't have a sense of time, day of week, time of the day. If I were to go see him right now, he may not know it's Friday, he may not know it's Friday night. He certainly doesn't know the time of the day. I bought him a big clock that I plugged in his room so he could see the date, the time, the temperature, and where he is. He can't remember if he ate breakfast, lunch, or dinner 5 minutes after eating. He can't remember what he ate at our house. It's not uncommon. Mrs. Westside Jeff cooks every Saturday and Sunday. We have dinner together, and afterwards we talk about what we had for dinner. And when I take him home, we have that discussion again the whole way home. Because I know the nurses and the aides will ask him. We get inside and they'll ask him, what'd you have for dinner? And he struggles to remember what we just talked about 3 minutes ago. And the other thing is, when he gets into telling a story, which he's a good storyteller, there's so many times he'll tell a story, and near the end of the story, he'll not the end of the story, but in the middle of the story, he'll kind of stop and say, well, anyway. Does that sound familiar to you? My buddy Earl, he's in the nursing home. It's assisted living memory care. I'm not the only one that experiences this. Many experience this, whether it be a loved one, a friend, a family member, a loved one or family member of someone you work with, a loved one or family member of a relative. This is not uncommon. This is not something that only Westside Jeff experiences. This is something a lot of people experience. I'd like to hear your stories about these kinds of things. You can connect with me across social media at Westside Jeff on Facebook, on X, on Instagram. Again, at Westside Jeff, or pick up the phone and dial 800-288-9227. That's 800-288-WBAP. My producer, Garrett, will answer the phone, tip me off. He'll ask you what your story is. So let me know what it is, and we'll talk about it on the air. Coming up in about 2 minutes, we're going to have Lori Waffenschmidt in the newsroom with an update on Joe Biden tonight, because he's doing his rally in Michigan, which I'll talk about on the other side of this. Lori will have that story and some audio. Now, the reason I tell you the story about my buddy Earl, and who has Alzheimer's, he's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. He's on all kinds of drugs to try to slow it down, but the nurses say there is no cure, Jeff. There's no treatment. It gets worse by the day, by the minute, by the hour, by the month, by the year. And I've seen it from month to month, from year to year, and everybody's a little bit different. But the reason I tell you this story is this. This applies to what's going on with Joe Biden. Does this sound familiar to you? Now, I'm not a doctor. I don't know if Joe Biden has dementia. I don't know if Joe has Alzheimer's. I don't know if Joe has Parkinson's or what. And I hear all the talk guys across radio dials and television. He's got dementia. He's got Alzheimer's. He's got Parkinson's. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't know what Joe has. I just know it's not right. What I do know is if Joe Biden were my loved one, if Joe Biden were my father, my brother, my uncle, my husband, I would make a doctor appointment tomorrow, first thing. And I'd attend that meeting with Joe. I'd figure it out. I'd determine if a treatment plan were accessible and what it would be, and work through it. I wouldn't cover it up like the entire administration and the family are doing. This is not new. My opinion is Joe has Alzheimer's. That's my opinion. I don't know what it is. I just know what I experience in my life with my best friend Earl that just brings me to tears sometimes and gets me emotional, which I'm getting right now. I just know I see the exact same stuff in Joe Biden. And I know that's not acceptable for the man that runs this country, makes policy, makes decisions, what they call the most powerful human being in the world. That's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for the party to cover it up. It's not acceptable for Jill and the family to cover it up. It's not acceptable for the White House press corps to not address it. Something's wrong. If he were my loved one, I'd have him a doctor. I don't care if he's president of the United States or not. I want to hear your opinion. 800-288-9227. 800-288-WBAP. 2 minutes. Lori Waffenschmidt with a story of Joe Biden in Michigan. We'll talk about that on the other side of this. Your calls coming up after this. Westside Jeff and for Chris Krok on News Talk 820 WBAP and Allen FM at 93.3. The name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. Sitting in for Chris. Chris is off tonight. I'm sitting here tonight, Monday and Tuesday, as he fills in for Casey during the day. And Casey's out chasing, I think, Carrie Underwood. Stalker, that's what I call that. We're talking about the state of what's going on. I shared a story moments ago about my best friend Earl, 58 years old. He came down with dementia and memory loss and some simple things. He was diagnosed. By the way, Karen, thank you for your note across social media. I got a note from Karen that said, "Hey Jeff, Alzheimer's is only diagnosed." I'm not a clinician. So, Karen, thank you for your note. Karen says Alzheimer's is only diagnosed with an autopsy, I guess, after death. It's dementia until then. I'm not a clinician, so I'm not going to get very particular about dementia, Alzheimer's. I just know this. My buddy Earl, his son, and I've talked several times since all this has gone down 2 years ago, and he said, Dad's been officially diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Nick said he'd share the report, as Nick typically is. He hadn't sent it to me just because it's Nick. He's off in his own land, so to speak, Nick land, I call it, and I've talked to the caregivers who say, yeah, he's got Alzheimer's. He's a memory care patient. That's why he's in the facility. He's got a Wonder Guard on, so he can't. They call him a runner. He can't be a runner. Right? Earl's not a runner, and he's not going to be a runner. I spend a lot of time with Earl still today. Every Saturday, every Sunday, I pick him up. We spend time together. He loves Mrs. Westside Jeff cooking, so have him over for dinner. I love Earl. I need Earl. I got to have him in my life. My life is much more enriched because of Earl. And what I see from Earl is very, very, very similar to what I'm seeing from Joe Biden. If you have some comments on this, I'd love to hear from you. I'm on social media at Westside Jeff. You can also reach out to 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP, like Tommy from Sherman. Tommy, thanks for listening. This is the Chris Krok Show. I'm Westside Jeff. Thanks for calling. What's your opinion on what you're hearing tonight here on News Talk 820 WBAP?
Well, I'm looking at the aspect of it being the wife who boisters his belief in himself with her educational background. Like, you're doing well. You've answered all the questions, and she's trying to keep it alive because she's gotten on the Vogue cover. She's getting things that she never had before. And once they leave office, there's nothing left for them. There's not going to be books and movies. I mean, he's declining so fast that he'll go quickly. And once he goes, no one will care about Joe Biden, Dr. Joe. And the son is holding him up because he's wanting him to stay alive long enough for him to get through his tax trial. And once he's found guilty, to have his father pardon him. And once that's done, he could care less, I think. So he's really a president in hostage situation.
Tommy, do you think Joe stays in the race till November 5th?
I'm sorry, say again.
Tommy, do you think that Joe stays in the race till November 5th? He's the nominee and stays in it?
Yes. Mm-hmm. I just think that.
Go ahead.
I just think that everybody's holding him hostage for their own agenda. And not that I don't approve of his politics. I don't approve of him. I don't approve of what he's done in the past with Ukraine and things like that. In a way, irony comes about. He's done all this to become president. As soon as he becomes president, he loses his mind. So it's like a Twilight Zone episode, if you think about it. But he's right now, our president is a president that's in hostage situation.
Interesting way to look at it, Tommy. I appreciate your opinion. Thank you for calling the show tonight. Appreciate you listening. It's an interesting opinion to look at the situation with Joe Biden, that he's a hostage. I could see where you'd say that. So thank you for calling and thank you for your opinion. I could see that. Here's what I'd say about that, and that is I believe that both candidates are in a fight for their life, and both of them, Trump and Biden. And both of them are doing it to stay out of prosecution. If Joe loses, his whole family is going to be prosecuted from the Republicans, and rightly so. They should be looking into a lot of things that don't add up. And Hunter is pushing it. Jill is pushing it. And the party, shame on them. Same with Trump. Trump, I think, understands that if he does not win the election, he'll be prosecuted the rest of his life. The Democrats will come after him. So I think both of them are fighting to win, to avoid prosecution the rest of their life. The name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff, and for Chris Krok. If you'd like to weigh in, I'm across social media at Westside Jeff on Facebook, on X, on Instagram, or you can pick up the phone and call 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. I'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinion on the mess that we're experiencing and in. So I'd love to hear from you. My opinion is simple. I still believe that Joe will not be the party nominee. I can't predict and tell you what's going to happen. I just don't think he's the guy. I said on this radio station last November, and people called me up on this radio station, said I was nuts. I said last November, phone in for Chris. I think it was over Thanksgiving. I said, I do not believe that in November 2024 that it will be Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. And it won't surprise me if it's neither of them, but I'll guarantee you, I just feel strongly it won't be at least one of them. I just didn't know which one. Because I could come up with a million different scenarios of why neither of them would be the candidate. Right now, nobody's talking about Trump. It's all Joe Biden. And I still don't believe that Joe Biden is going to be the guy. And my politicos, I'm very connected politically. I deal with a lot of folks in high political positions who say I'm nuts. And I hear them and I understand them and I appreciate their opinion. I just believe between now and then there's so much pressure that can be applied to Joe Biden. And it would be to their advantage in the Democratic Party to make a change. And it'd be more advantage to them to make a change the later in this race than ever, because that shortens that window of uncovering and becoming aware and knowledgeable of the party nominee. But in order to do that, the whole party has to rally behind him. I'll tell you in about 8 minutes more about what that looks like, because there's the whether or not Joe stays in the race, whether or not he continues to be the party nominee. That decision comes down to three very distinct constituencies. There are three constituencies that Joe Biden has in order to stay in the race or not in the race, and what the Democratic Party and the DNC does. I'll tell you what those are in about 8 minutes. But first, I want to talk about the story Lori Waffenschmidt in the newsroom, my partner in crime tonight, shared, and that is Joe Biden campaigning in Michigan. There's a reason why Joe Biden's in Michigan tonight. Again, I follow politics. The name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. For years, I worked in the radio business up in Ohio, and I handled I worked with political candidates. I met multiple people who were running for the White House and worked with political races. Anybody you talk to will tell you right now, as of today, as of 8:42 p.m. tonight, as of right now, on Friday night, this race comes down to three key swing states. Three key swing states, as of today, are going to impact the outcome of the election. I'll tell you what those three are in about 4 minutes. I got to hit a break in just a minute. I'll tell you what they are and why they're important and how it ties into the story, especially right now and tonight, because it's very important to talk about that. I'll also talk about the three key constituencies that Joe Biden has to continue to stay in the race or to be removed from the race, and what happens. My name's Jeff. It's Westside Jeff. Chris Krok filled in earlier for Casey. I'm filling in for Chris. I'll be back on Monday night and Tuesday night too. If you want to weigh in, I'm on social media at Westside Jeff. You can also pick up the phone and dial 800-288-9227. Westside Jeff. And for Chris Krok on News Talk 820 WBAP and now on FM at 93.3. Other breaking news today happened just recently, not long ago, is the Alec Baldwin case. Interesting story out of the Baldwin case. Lori Waffenschmidt will have that story, the audio of it, coming up in about 12 minutes in the newscast. Come up top of the hour. Lori Waffenschmidt in the WBAP newsroom has that story top of the hour about Alec Baldwin in that case on the set of the movie Rusk. My name is Jeff. It's Westside Jeff sitting in for Chris Krok. We're talking about the scenario that's going on in Washington with Joe Biden. Tonight, Joe Biden's in Michigan. We'll talk about that in 3 minutes. If you want to weigh in, you can hit me up across social media at Westside Jeff on Facebook, on Instagram, and on X, formerly known as Twitter. Or just pick up a phone like Alan has. Dial 800-288-9227, 800-288-WBAP. Alan from Itasca. Did I say that right, Itasca?
You got that right, man. Good job pronouncing it.
How about that, brother? Thanks for calling. What are your thoughts on the Biden scenario, Biden condition?
I've been watching Biden, and my mother has been declining with dementia, and I've seen a whole lot of similarities. She's already in the nursing home, and she's being cared for over there. But before she left, I see a lot of what Biden's doing and what she did, like forgetting of the names, getting names mixed up. She would always get me and my brothers, and actually my father too, get our names mixed up, but she would correct herself. After that happened, I would say maybe a year and a half, she forgot all of us. Dementia just took her over. So I'm betting money within a year, 2 years, Biden's going to forget every world leader's name. He's going to have somebody in front of him with an Etch-a-Sketch writing somebody's name down so he remembers it during his speech, if he can even make the speeches.
It's funny, Alan, because he's already forgotten world leader names as he introduced the president
exactly
from Ukraine as Putin and referenced his vice president as Trump.
Exactly. So
he's doing exactly that.
In the future, he's going to forget his wife. She's going to be gone, and who knows? He's going to get her mixed up with world leaders.
He's already done that a year ago. Yeah. As his campaign stop, he referenced his wife as his sister. His sister is his wife.
My mother calls my dad a grand friend.
Wow, Alan. Let me ask you: if it's like my buddy Earl, and ask you your scenario, you're talking about you're seeing the exact same stuff out of your mom.
Yeah.
Was her long-term memory pretty daggone good, like my buddy Earl?
Oh, dude, she's a high school teacher. Intelligent. She can't even carry on a conversation now.
But before it got really bad, she could remember long-term memory stuff, right? Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. And the dementia just started, it just eats away at your brain.
It goes after the routine, the simplest routine things first, exactly. and starves that person of long-term memory next, right?
Next, exactly. She's totally forgot me and my brothers. When we go see her, I can see, the look in her eyes. Who are you?
Alan, thank you for listening. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you adding to the conversation. You reinforce exactly what I'm saying, and that is talking about. Thanks for calling. Talking about my buddy Earl.
Me and my dad have a good time about Joe comparing him to Mom. So,
talk about my buddy Earl, who was 58 years old, diagnosed with Alzheimer's or dementia. He's in he's in a facility. It's a assisted living and memory care, and what I'm seeing. Earl has been divorced 10 years, doesn't have a significant other. He's got one son that really not involved in his life a whole lot because his son doesn't have the bandwidth to deal with it. So I spend a lot of time with Earl every Saturday, every Sunday, usually one night a week, every other week. I have Earl over to my house. Mrs. Westside Jeff cooks every Saturday, every Sunday. We have dinner together, spend a lot of time. It's not uncommon for me to spend 7-8 hours with Earl on a Saturday or Sunday. And what I'm seeing out of Earl is long-term memory is phenomenal. Some of his, he'll tell stories and reference stories from 10, 20 years ago to the detail. I don't even remember. He'll tell a story. This weekend he told a story, and I'm like, huh? And he went on and on. I said, Earl, I don't remember that. And he said, and who has dementia? And I'm like, well, not me. You're the one in the home. And he's like, I don't know, Jeff. But he'll go into detail, and then as we'll talk about some stories, I'm like, I do remember that. But I don't remember like he did. He's spot on. That's his memory. But when you ask Earl to put a seatbelt on, he didn't know what you're talking about. You ask Earl to go in the bathroom and poop and then wipe, he has no clue. You ask him to take a shower, he stands in the shower with his clothes on. Simple little things that are the easiest things to know. Those are the things he struggles with. And those are the kinds of things I'm seeing out of Joe Biden. I don't know if it's Parkinson's. I don't know if it's dementia, Alzheimer's. I don't know what it is. All I know is if Joe Biden were my loved one, I'd have a doctor's appointment with him the next day and have it diagnosed, figure it out, and try to figure out how to solve it. Because it's a problem. And that kind of a person, that man does not deserve to be president of the United States, most powerful man in the world. Should not be. And certainly not running for office. I don't think he's going to be the nominee. Now, I mentioned a moment ago, I tell this story about Michigan and tell you a story about the 3 most important states in the election as of tonight. As of this minute. Again, I'm an inside politico. I follow politics. I watch politics. I have friends in high places in politics. Many of them think I'm off on some of the things that I say, and one of them is they all say Joe's going to be the nominee. I don't think so. I may be wrong in this, but I just think the public pressure and the pressure from his 3 constituencies is going to get to be very difficult. I don't have enough time to go into the 3 constituencies and the connection to Michigan, so I'll get to it after the top of the hour. Coming up in 3 minutes, Lori Waffenschmidt in the newsroom is going to be talking about Joe and Michigan, and she'll have audio in that, but also the Alec Baldwin case.